Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Church of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the Star Quest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 214. We're covering Apostolicum Axios Tactum 12 on the Apostolate of Young People. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican and frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we spoke about marriage and the family are an important lay apostolate, which we should support and defend the family. Now, today, we're going to continue with chapter 3, the various fields of apostolate. We're going to talk about the apostolate by and for young adults and how it is important to build up the church. This is really the young adult apostolate, and one of the things that is overarching in this is not to make it this separate thing. That's one of the challenges I see sometimes in Canadian American dioceses. I'm not as familiar with other countries, but I do notice that that is a challenge for us, is to very much silo the various different ministries, young adults, teenagers, etc. So paragraph 12 here, it has three subparagraphs. 12a, young people have an important and constantly changing role in society. B, young people can and should do apostolate. C, young adults and older adults should work together in harmony. By older adults here, I just mean anybody who's not a young adult who's older and not a kid. So let's start with 12a. Young persons exert very important influence in modern society. There's been a radical change in the circumstances of their lives, their mental attitudes, and their relationship with their own families. Frequently, they move too quickly in a new social and economic status, while their social and even political importance is growing day by day. They seem unable to cope adequately with their new responsibilities. One thing I notice in our society is we have almost this cult of youth. Everyone tries to look younger. Very few people, except for maybe actors playing specific roles, try and look older. People my dad's age want to look like my age. People my age want to look like they're in their 20s. And yes, there's a certain degree of healthiness that if you live a healthy life, when you're 60, you're probably going to look a little younger than if you live a really not so healthy life when you're 60. But it is this idea of this cult of, like, say, 15 to 30, where that's kind of like put up as the ideal, the perfect thing. But it's not. There is a certain wisdom in older age, but this age, this younger age, has an important influence on society because that's the age we have all these pro athletes, we have all I shouldn't say all, but a good portion of the actors and actresses and things like that. And youth is a time of change. You're going through hormones, you're deciding on a career, deciding on a vocation, within that vocation deciding on who you're going to marry, assuming it's marriage, or which community or whatever, if you're religious. And at the same time, and so there is that challenge. And one of the things we've noticed, if you go to Christian Smith, Young Catholic America, he notes that those who go to Mass as Catholics at 25 tend to go until they're 75, 80 or later, and they start having issues. They physically can't get there. But we do have a big drop-off between about 12, 15, and 25. And so this is an important area in that sense, that if we help these people to really live out their Christian faith well, they will continue to do that as adults. At least likely. This is not a perfect every single case, but it's a general thing. And they need help coping with all the changes. Young people need this help, and we need to provide it. So 12b is saying that young people can and should do apostolate. I think, at least in Canada and the U.S., this generally is not a huge issue, that most people do think that people in their 18, 20 years old, 16 years old can do apostolate, but let's talk about it. Let's read it first and then talk about it. 12b. Their heightened influence in society demands of them a proportionate apostolic activity, but their natural qualities also fit them for this activity. As they become more conscious of their own personalities, they are impelled by a zest for life and a ready eagerness to assume their own responsibilities, and they yearn to play their part in social and cultural life. If this zeal is imbued with the Spirit of Christ and is inspired by obedience and love for the Church, it can be expected to be very fruitful. They should become the first to carry on the apostolate directly to other young persons, concentrating their apostolic efforts within their own circle according to the needs of the social environment in which they live. So it's important to these apostolates due to that large influence. At these age, our capabilities are developed. We can be conscious on our own abilities. They can be conscious of their own abilities. Now that I'm a little old for that, I passed the big 4-0. Some of the things that the church takes young people up to their early 30s, In the US, usually about 30 is the break-off, but I'm more than a decade past 30 at this point in my life. And young people are really able to apostle on their own, unlike kids. I look at my niece and nephews who are in elementary school, and I think, yes, they can do apostle, but they really, other than maybe simple conversation, they really need to be accompanied by adults. I'm not going to send them to go and say, hey, go and serve food at the homeless shelter, unless their mom and dad or somebody else's mom and dad are going with them, or some other kind of adults, right? But 16, 18, 20-year-olds, yeah, you can go and do that apostle on your own. You don't need an adult accompanying you anymore. They're moved by zeal, and there is a sense that young people are probably going to be best focusing apostolate on other young people, not necessarily on older people as much. But that is not an absolute thing. It's a general thing. Now, moving on to our last subparagraph today, 12C. It's talking about how young adults and older adults, meaning anybody like 40 plus, not necessarily like older adults, who often mean like retired people, should work together in harmony. So let's read 12C. Adults ought to engage in such friendly discussion with young people that both age groups, overcoming the age barrier, may become better acquainted and share the special benefits each generation can offer the other. Adults should stimulate young persons, first by a good example to take part in the apostolate, and if the opportunity presents itself, by offering them effective advice and willing assistance. By the same token, young people should cultivate towards adults respect and trust. And although they are naturally attracted to novelties, they should duly appreciate praiseworthy traditions. As I noted before, I think young adult ministry is too often too siloed, but we need to work together here. And it teaches both sides lessons. Because young people can teach older people new things about technology. I know my dad is a little bit of a Luddite. It's always like, it was a big deal to get him to switch from text to WhatsApp so that then we could do like a group thing with the whole family and things like that. It was a big challenge. Now he understands it, but those type of things. But also there's wisdom of being older that you can help young people with. And this, our kind of cultural thing where it's very much divided by boomers, Gen X, millennials, iGen, Zoomers, whatever you want to call them, Gen Alpha, those type of things, those kind of divisions are not the most helpful when this. I shouldn't say they are helpful. They can help explain cultural differences between them. But we shouldn't just be like, oh, this is ministry for Zoomers. This is ministry for Gen X. No, we should be much more fluid in this, much more combined. And one of the ways I think that older people can especially be helpful is things like marriage prep. I know a lot of parishes do things where they do an older couple mentoring a younger couple. My parents did that for a while. They ended up mentoring an NHL player, not a superstar, somebody, but I guess like some other people knew who he was because he played for the Calgary Flames. Obviously, if you know, my family's from Calgary. I don't remember his name, but he was getting married, in his 20s, and my parents ended up being the ones chosen for to mentor him and his wife, well, his fiance then, obviously. And so, if we encourage young people to do ministry in their 18 and in their 20s, then they should continue to do that, and this can be the start of a life of service. Thus concludes today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast, and you can donate to help StarQuest produce another great podcast at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time monthly during the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow, we're going to continue with the next paragraph of Apostolical Maxistatum, paragraph 13 on the apostolate in the social milieu. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which provides a blueprint for the Catholic Church. If you want more information on the podcast, like playlists for individual documents and a reading plan, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X. There's also a Discord with a channel for Vatican II in the Year at sqpn.com/Discord. Amen.